Welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly pumped you're here today, because we're about to look at a truly fascinating and honestly completely counterintuitive psychological trap. We are going to explore exactly why talking about our goals, sharing our biggest, most exciting dreams with everyone around us, might actually be the very reason we fail to achieve them. I know, it sounds totally backward, right? We're always taught to put our goals out into the universe. But today we're going to see why absolute silence might just be your single most powerful tool.
I want you to let this question really sink in for a second. Have you ever told everyone about a big dream, something you were just incredibly fired up about, only to watch it slowly lose its momentum and die? Did you notice what happened right after you shared it? You probably felt amazing in that exact moment, but then, the actual execution of the goal became so much harder. Today, we're unpacking a brilliant parable that explains exactly why this happens to literally so many of us.
Okay, let's dive straight into this with Section 1, The Trap of Talking.
Our story centers around a young guy in a small village named Simon. Now, Simon was known by absolutely everyone as the guy with the massive, world-changing dreams. He was constantly overflowing with these bold new ideas. But, he had a really severe problem with his focus and his follow-through. Look at this timeline. One week, he was totally certain he was going to open the biggest shop in the entire village. But the very next week, that plan was completely abandoned, and he's telling everyone he's going to master the art of pottery and make the most beautiful pots in the world. By week 3, he had pivoted entirely again, now claiming he was going to build this grand house. His ambition was literally everywhere, but his actual progress? Nowhere.
The reason for this constant pivoting really comes down to a very specific behavioral loop that Simon fell into. Before he ever lifted a single finger to do any actual work, he'd march through the market and loudly announce his grand plans. And what happened? Well, the villagers clapped. They smiled. They showered him with encouraging words. Simon would go to bed feeling incredibly proud and important. But here is the massive trap. The very next morning, when it was actually time to do the hard, grueling work of building a shop or throwing clay, he'd wake up completely tired. His energy was just gone. He had already gotten the reward, so he just abandoned the project entirely.
Which brings us to Section 2, Simon's Cycle of Failure.
Empty hands, a heavy, stuck heart. This wasn't just a bad week for Simon. This exhausting pattern continued for years. He'd announce every single dream, and the people around him would celebrate his words. But as soon as that applause faded, the harsh reality of his situation remained stubbornly unchanged. While his loud words were always celebrated, his hands stayed completely empty. His life simply wasn't changing, and he began to feel this deep, heavy sense of shame. He just couldn't figure out why he always failed to finish what he started. One evening, feeling completely stuck and totally overwhelmed by this heavy heart, Simon sat alone near the old village well, absolutely desperate for an answer.
This leads us directly to Section 3, the lesson of the seeds.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens next. As Simon sat there grieving his empty hands, a quiet, highly respected village elder approached him. But instead of giving him some long lecture, the elder offered a visual metaphor. The next morning in his garden, the elder took 2 seeds. The first seed he told Simon to bury deep in the ground, cover it with soil, and leave it hidden away in the darkness where it would be watered quietly. But the second seed, the elder held it up high for everyone to see. He called over some playing children and loudly announced how wonderful and beautiful the tree from this specific seed was going to be. The children clapped and cheered, completely mirroring how the villagers always reacted to Simon's big dreams. Then, the elder simply placed that highly praised seed out in the open, fully exposed on a rock.
So let's look at the inevitable outcome over the following weeks. The elder quietly watered that hidden seed, never speaking a single word about it. Slowly, a tiny green shoot broke through the earth, growing stronger and stronger week after week. But what about the seed on the rock? It stayed exactly the same. It dried up in the harsh sun. Eventually, birds came down and stole pieces of it. Because it was left out in the open for everyone to see and praise, it literally never had the chance to take root and grow.
This brings us to the real climax of our explainer today. Section 4, The Illusion of Progress.
The energy you need for action gets wasted in words? When Simon saw that tiny, strong plant sitting right next to the empty rocks, something inside his brain finally clicked. The elder looked right at him and delivered this absolutely incredibly powerful truth. The energy you need for action gets wasted in words. Just let that sit with you for a second. We all have a finite amount of drive and momentum for any new endeavor. When we spend our time talking about what we're going to do, we are quite literally leaking the very fuel we need to actually do it.
Now, what's really interesting here is this concept of premature pride. It's that false sense of achievement and pleasure you get entirely from other people's praise, rather than from your own completed work. The elder explained to Simon that when you share your dreams way too early, people's praise gives you an immediate hit of pleasure. Your brain actually gets tricked into thinking the goal is already done. You feel successful just from the applause. And because your mind honestly thinks the finish line has already been crossed, your heart completely loses the fire to keep going. You've essentially consumed the reward before doing a single ounce of the work.
So the absolutely crucial point here is this. Dreams, especially in their earliest stages, are incredibly fragile. Just like a seed, if you expose a new idea to the bright, glaring lights of public opinion and premature praise too soon, it's going to dry up. You have to fiercely protect your new ideas. You got to keep them quiet and let them develop in the dark, nutrient-rich soil of your own solitary effort.
Which brings us to the ultimate solution in Section 5, the power of silence.
Simon realized he had never needed to finish a project because the applause made him feel like he already had. So he adopted a strict, no-nonsense methodology to break his cycle. Step 1. Instead of a grand, sweeping vision, he chose one very simple, tangible goal, building a wooden chair. Step 2, and this is the most important part, he told absolutely no one. He didn't announce it, he didn't gather a crowd. And Step 3, every single evening after his daily chores, he simply retreated to a quiet corner and worked. No pressure, no expectations, just hands and wood. Because nobody knew what he was doing, nobody asked him any questions, nobody had any expectations of him. There was zero external pressure. It was just Simon, his hands, and the wood. And, some days he was excited, other days he was totally exhausted. He made plenty of mistakes, for sure, but he quietly fixed them and learned slowly, without that rush of empty praise distracting him from the actual unglamorous process of creation.
Real pride comes from doing, not just words. And then, finally, the chair was finished. It was strong, it was smooth, and as Simon sat on it, he felt something entirely new. He felt real pride, not that cheap, fleeting pride that comes from getting unearned applause in the market, but the deep, anchoring satisfaction that comes purely from doing the hard work. When his neighbor finally saw the chair sitting outside and asked, in total shock when he made it, Simon just smiled and said, "I wanted to finish it first."
Let's move ahead and see how this builds, because this compounding effect is huge. That one quiet success created a completely new positive loop, because word spread about this beautiful chair, but by the time people were praising it, Simon was already working in pure silence on his next project. He built a chair, then a small table, then a shelf, then a stool. The compounding effect of quiet, focused work yielded massive, highly tangible success over the years.
A skilled craftsman whose actions spoke louder than his words. Simon was completely transformed. He became known throughout the entire village as a master craftsman. But honestly, more importantly, he had completely lost the need for external validation before starting a project. He no longer craved that rush of empty pride. The quiet satisfaction of building something real was more than enough for him, and the village respected him infinitely more because his actions were finally speaking way louder than his words.
And this brings us right to the ultimate lesson of this explainer, and exactly how it applies to you and me. When the tree is strong, everyone will see it without you saying a word. When you speak about your plans too early, you give away your power. You let the reactions of others replace the hard reality of your own effort. Keep your dreams close, protect them. Because when your tree is finally strong and fully grown, you won't need to announce a single thing. Everyone is going to see what you've built without you having to say a word. So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to carry with you today. The very next time you feel that burning, overwhelming urge to tell everyone about your amazing new idea, pause. Seriously, stop and ask yourself, will you let your seed grow powerfully in the darkness, or will you expose it to dry up on the rock? Keep it quiet. Do the work. Log off, go find your own quiet corner, and start building something real today.